Hello, second graders. My name is Miss Taylor, and I am going to be reading the next chapter from our read aloud book, The City of Ember. So, last week, Miss Schultz read chapter 2 for us, and chapter 2 was A Message to the Mayor. And Lena, who is a messenger, that's her job, she had a message from Looper, and she delivered it to the mayor. Delivery at 8 from Looper. So she delivered it to the mayor, but she also did some dancing around on the rooftop of the gathering hall. And then Dune saw her do that. All right, so let's see what happens. We met the mayor, and he seemed kind of like a pretty grumpy guy. And he was not very happy with Lena, but after she told him the message, he became a little bit nicer. So we'll keep thinking about what we've figured out that the City of Ember has and doesn't have. So we're thinking about, the City of Ember, they don't have, it doesn't seem like they have a sun or a moon. They're running out of light bulbs. We have these people that are messengers like Lena, and they run messages all over the town. So they must not have telephones or computers. Because usually if we wanted to send a message, we would send a message on the phone or computer, email, or text message. So, interesting. And then we also thought it was interesting that the students go to school only until they're 12 and then they get jobs. So that's also something that's different. So let's keep thinking about what's the same and what's different about the City of Ember and where we live. All right, chapter 3 is called Under Ember. Under Ember. That morning, Dune arrived at the pipeworks full of anticipation. This was the world of serious work at last, where he would get a chance to do something useful. What he'd learned in school and from his father and from his own investigations, he could put it all to good purpose now. He pushed open the heavy pipeworks door and stepped inside. The air smelled strongly of dampness and moldy rubber, which seemed to him a pleasant, interesting smell. He strode up a hallway where yellow slickers hung from pegs on the walls. At the end of the hallway was a room full of people, some of them sitting on benches and pulling on knee-high rubber boots, some struggling into their slickers, some buckling on tool belts. A raucous clamor filled the room. Dune watched from the doorway, eager to join in, but not sure what to do. After a moment, a man emerged from the throng. He thrust out a hand. "Lister Monk, Pipeworks Director," he said. "You're the new boy, right? What size feet do you have? Large, medium, or small?" Kind of a funny way to ask your shoe size, right? We have numbers usually. Do you wear a size 2 or 3 or 4 or 5? Medium," said Dune. And Lister found him a slicker and a pair of boots. The boots were so ancient, so old, that their green rubber was cracked all over, as if covered with spider webs. He gave Dune a tool belt, too, in which were wrenches and hammers, spools of wire and tape, and tubes of some sort of black goop. "You'll be in Tunnel 97 today," Lister said. "Arlen Frawl will go down with you and show you what to do." He pointed to a short, delicate-looking girl with a white blonde braid down her back. "She may not look like an expert, but she is." Dune buckled his tool belt around his waist and put on his slicker, which for some reason smelled like sweaty feet. Ew. "This way," said Arlen, without saying hello or smiling. She wove through the crowd of workers to a door marked Stairway and opened it. Stone steps led so far down that Dune couldn't see the end of them. On either side was a sheer wall of dark reddish stone, glistening with dampness. There was no railing. Along the ceiling ran a single wire from which a light bulb hung every few yards. Water stood in shallow pools on each stair, in the hollow worn into the stones by years of footsteps. They started down. Dune concentrated on his feet. The clumsy boots made it hard not to stumble. As they went deeper, he began to hear a low roar. So low he seemed to hear it more with his stomach than with his ears. It grew louder and louder. Was it a machine of some kind? Maybe the generator. The stairway came to an end at a door marked Main Tunnel. Arlen opened it, and they stepped through. Dune realized that the sound he had been hearing wasn't a machine. It was the river. He stood still, staring. Ooh, and as I read this next part, let's see if we can get a picture in our mind. Let's try to visualize. We're going to try to get a picture of what's happening in this story. He stood still, staring. Like most people, he had never really been sure what a river was. Just that it was water and somehow flowed on its own. Do you know what a river is? Yeah. So that's another interesting thing. They've never heard of a river before. He'd imagined it would be like the clear, narrow stream that came out of the kitchen faucet, only bigger and horizontal instead of vertical. But this was something entirely different. Not a stream of water, but endless tons of it pouring by. Wide as the widest street in Ember, churning and dipping and swirling. The river roared past, its turbulent surface like black liquid glass, scattered with flecks of light. Dune had never seen anything that moved so fast, and he had never heard such a thunderous, heart-stopping roar. Can you imagine seeing a river for the first time and hearing a river? They can be quite noisy when you get close to them. The path they stood on was about 6 feet wide and ran parallel to the river for farther down than Dune could see in both directions. In the wall along the path were openings that must lead, Dune thought, to the tunnels that branched everywhere below the city. A string of lights like the one in the stairway hung high up against the arched ceiling. Dune knew he was standing beneath the north edge of Ember. In school, you were taught to remember the directions this way. North was the direction of the river. South was the direction of the greenhouses. East was the direction of the school, and west was the direction left over, having nothing in particular to mark it. All the pipeworks tunnels branched off from the main tunnel to the south, toward the city. Arlen leaned toward Dune and shouted into his ear. "First we'll go to the beginning of the river," she said. Why is she shouting? Because the river is so loud, right? Nice inferring. So that was inferring, kind of figuring some stuff out, even though it doesn't say that in this story. Let's see. She led him up the tunnel for a long way. They passed other people in yellow slickers who greeted Arlen with a nod and glanced curiously at Dune. Who's the new guy? After 15 minutes or so, they came to the east edge of the pipeworks, where the river surged up from a deep chasm in the ground, churning so violently that its dark water turned white and filled the air with a spray that wet Dune's face. In the wall to their right was a wide double door. "You see that door right there?" Arlen shouted, pointing. "Yes," Dune shouted back. "That's the generator room. Can we go in?" "Of course not," said Arlen. "You have to have special permission." She pointed back down the main tunnel. "Now we'll go to the end of the river," she said. She led him back, past the stairway door, all the way to the west edge of the pipeworks. There, the river flowed into a huge opening in the wall and vanished into darkness. "Where does it go?" Dune asked. Arlen just shrugged. "Back into the ground, I guess. Now let's find Tunnel 97 and get to work." She pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket. "This is the map," she said. "You have one in your pocket, too. You have to use the map to find your way around in here." The map looked to Dune like an immense centipede. The river arched across the top of the page like the centipede's body, and the tunnels dangled down from it like hundreds of long, long legs, all tangled up with each other. To get to Tunnel 97, they followed a complicated route through passageways lined with crusty, rusted pipes that carried water to all the buildings of Ember. Puddles stood on the floor of the tunnel, and water dripped in brown rivulets down the walls. Just as in the main tunnel, there was a string of light bulbs along the ceiling that provided dim light. Dune occupied his mind by calculating how far underground he was. How far down are we? From the river to the ceiling of the main tunnel must be 30 feet or so, he thought. Above that were the storerooms, which occupied a layer at least 20 feet high. So that meant he was 50 feet underground. Wow. With tons of earth and rock and buildings above him. The thought made him tense up in his shoulders. He cast a quick glance upward as if all that weight might collapse onto his head. It's like, yikes, I'm 50 feet below, and it could all come crumbling down. Let's see. Here we are, said Arlen. She was standing next to a leak that spurted a stream of water straight out from the wall. We have to turn the shutoff valve, take the pipe apart, put out on a new connector, and stick it back together again. With wrenches, hammers, washers, and black goop, they did this, getting soaked in the process. It took them most of the morning and proved to Dune that the city was in even worse shape than he'd suspected. Not only were the lights about to fail and the supplies about to run out, but the water system was breaking down. So Dune is like, what's happening to our city? The lights are going off all the time. We're running out of light bulbs. We're running out of other supplies. And now the water system, like all the pipes are breaking and leaking. The whole city was crumbling, and what was anyone doing about it? When the lunch break came, Arlen took her lunch sack from a pocket in her tool belt and went off to meet some friends a few tunnels away. You stay right here and wait till I get back, she said as she left. If you wander around, you'll get lost. But Dune set out as soon as she disappeared. So Dune's like, okay, I'll just stay right here. And then he left. Using his map, he found his way back to the main tunnel, then hurried to the east end. He wasn't going to wait for special permission to see the generator. He was pretty sure he could find a way to get in on his own. And he did. He simply stood by the door and waited for someone to come out. Quite soon, a stout woman carrying a lunch sack pushed open the door and walked away. She didn't notice him. Before the door could close again, Dune slipped inside. So now Dune is in the room with the generator, and he has snuck in. What do you think he's going to find? The generator. So the generator is kind of a big machine that's helping to power things, to power the city. Do you think it's going to be in good shape, like the pipes? Or do you think it might not be in very good shape? We'll have to find out next time. So I will read the rest of chapter 3 on Thursday. Alrighty, so have a great rest of the day, second graders, and I will see you again soon. Bye.